Some budget amendments are also needed over in the special revenue fund to true up the activity of fiscal year end September 30th, 2014. Under Tech River, there was an additional increase needed for budgeted appropriations for improvements that were incurred after fiscal year in 2015, which is the increase of $8,313. That was the last payment on the, was that the security system? The security system out there at that building, which was incurred in 14. Down below, next to number 3, the expense allocations for the Tech River overhead that were originally budgeted in the special revenue fund needed to be reclassed. That nets to zero, that reclassification. We're just moving allocations between one expense account or the other to shore that activity to actual. The capital outlay on the Tech River building corresponds to the increase in fund balance needed, the $8,313. And finally, the transfer out to the general fund corresponds to the transfer in on the general fund amendment. It was for administrative monies per the Mosaic grant agreement that were transferred between funds.
Any questions or comments from board members on the special revenue fund? If not, do we have a motion? Any other comments from board members?
Did he make a motion?
That was Jim and Lori.
You couldn't hear a word.
Any other comments from board members? Any public comment? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, Charlie.
Thank you. Next, we'll move on to the fiscal year in 2015 budget amendments. When that budget was adopted by the board in September, several of the EDA grant applications in the general fund at that time were in the status of applied for. We now know what the final grants that were awarded were, and therefore we're changing the fiscal year in 2015 budget to reflect that. So on the general fund budget amendment for fiscal year in October 1/14 through September 30th, 2015 over on the general fund side. The first line item is grant expenditures that we incurred in 14 on the water sewer corridor fiscal year in 2012 EDA grant that we do not have available for fiscal year in 2015 as we originally budgeted. In the original budget, we didn't expect to expend anything in fiscal year in 2014 on that EDA grant award. $19,355 was expended in the prior fiscal year, therefore we don't have that in the current fiscal year. The next line item is there was an additional $200,000 awarded on the water sewer corridor fiscal year in 2012 EDA grant that was not originally budgeted for. So that's the $200,000 increase. We had budgeted a grant for water sewer corridor fiscal year in 2015 grant award of $500,000. No grant award was received for that, and so we're removing that $500,000 from the original budget. The next line item is on the incubator grant. We estimated grant expenditures too high for fiscal year in 2014 on the incubator grant, fiscal year in 2014 EDA grant award. So this amount remains available to expend in fiscal year in 2015 on the original $1.6 million grant. On the new grant, the new incubator fiscal year in 2015 grant, we had originally budgeted that grant at $1.604363. What was awarded was 1.6. Was it 1.5?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, yes, I'm sorry about that. But yeah, what was actually awarded was 1.5, so we're reducing that allocation to decrease it from the 1.604 to the 1.5. The pre-treatment facility, the EDA grant award for fiscal year in 2015 that was originally budgeted was $146,000 higher compared to the final award of $150,000. So we had budgeted for $296,111, and that came in at $150,000 is the difference there. And then finally, we incurred additional capital outlay on the Florican building in fiscal year in 2014, on the Florican fiscal year in 2013 EDA grant award that is not available for 2015 as originally budgeted. So some of that was actually some payables we accrued for the audit and monies that were paid in October of this year, but were actually payables at 9/30/13, so they were accrued for financial audit purposes. And then below the appropriations, the increases and decreases below correspond with the increases and decreases above. We're increasing or decreasing the grant expenditures or the capital outlay. And the difference between the two is a grant expenditure is something that is not going to remain an asset of the IDA, such as the water sewer corridor, which is the county's asset, unlike the pre-treatment facility in Florican, which are considered capital outlay because they are assets of the IDA.
And just as a point of clarification, to make sure we're all on the same page, what we just approved was more looking back at prior months, whereas what we are about to take a look at is looking forward at our projection. So I just wanted to make that point of clarification for everyone. So now we need to entertain a motion to approve the general fund budget amendments that take us through September 30, 2015. Do we have any other questions or comments from board members? Ms. Prescott?
I'd like to ask a little bit more question about the water and sewer corridor for the 2015 grant. And what was the deal there? What happened?
Charlie said there wasn't a grant awarded, which technically it's not his fault. He just didn't say it exactly right. We worked with the EDA board to redo the contract. There was money appropriated for that project for this year. What was the dollar amount on that one finally, Christina?
From the EDA?
Yeah,
150.
150. So there was 150,000 appropriated for this cycle.
Water sewer is
Additional 200, I'm sorry. Free treatment was 150.
Right.
Water sewer
Okay.
received
I'm
an
sorry.
additional 200.
So when you see it up there under the revenue increases and decreases, you see the 200,000. That was the grant award that we brought in this year. When you look down where he was saying the water, the 500,000 that was overstated, that was the original grant request. And we were awarded the 200,000. So it shows up, we requested X amount of dollars, so it was overstated, but we took in 200,000 on the contract. So he just.
which was added to the original 2012 grant award versus a new fiscal year in 2015 grant.
Right. Instead of doing a completely separate grant contract, they just tacked it on to the existing contract, which was for, the original was for 650. So, does that answer that?
Any other questions or comments from board members? If not, we'll entertain a motion to approve. Motion made by Jean. Do we have a second?
Second.
By Doug. Any other comments from board members? Any public comment? If not, all those in favor? Anyone opposed? Okay, we will move into the special fund for fiscal year ending September 30th, 2015.
And all we have there is to reallocate $200,000 from the Mosaic money for JDC phosphates, which was approved at the last meeting. Right, the minutes reflect that, and we're making an amendment now for JDC.
Phil said,
Wait a minute, that grant was not approved at last meeting.
Phil said that he would put it in a budget amendment for approval at this month's meeting. So that is what Charlie is presenting, is for us to approve it to put in the budget.
Right, so at this point, this particular budget amendment is something that needs to have discussion from the board. You can either decide to appropriate that money back to them. We took it out.
I
We took
understand.
everything out of the mosaic. and
Why would we go ahead and put it in there when we haven't approved the grant yet?
It's-
Well, we'd had at one time.
Yes, I know,
the grant, we never funded the grant.
Right,
So when we
had it in our budget,
went back through and redid the budget, we said that we would revisit reappropriating that money to them. So that's where
we
we're.
would
that's where we are.
consider doing that.
Correct.
And, you know, and and I supported that. In fact, I made the motion to approve that last time. But what I heard from Tip this last time, I did not hear what I heard last time in order for me to support it again. So I'm just concerned that we're gonna go ahead and put this in the budget before we discuss giving it to them.
No, the board should have discussion now, or choose to have discussion at a separate meeting and direct Charlie to, this particular budget amendment would be scratched. But if you would like the whole discussion today regarding, the presentation that Tip made at last month's meeting, this is the point that we should make that decision. If you wanna have discussion or table it and scratch this amendment.
Okay, that discussion he had at the last meeting, now, was that his full pitch for this thing?
To my knowledge, yes. We had asked him prior to the meeting, if he wanted that money to be appropriated back
That's
in
not what I'm
there.
asking you.
If he wanted the money to be appropriated back to him, he needed to come before the board at that time and do a full presentation as to
Okay.
why he wanted that money.
He's gonna do that.
No, that's what he did.
Okay,
So, yes.
well, I'm ready to discuss it now.
Yes, it was a
Okay.
presentation.
The last time that we appropriated that $200,000, it was under the premises that he was going to build a plant in Hardy County down the road. He did not say that the other day.
I don't.
No, we spend our money in Hardy County, we don't spend it, you know, we're supposed to anyway, to create jobs for Hardy County. Now, if we're gonna give him $200,000 to do this road thing, his plan was in the future to build, because this plant up there is just, like a hybrid or something.
Right.
But he was gonna build one possibly out around CF.
Yes.
What is that still what he's saying?
I mean, I recall it a little bit different. I don't recall that, that he was guaranteeing a plant to be built in Hardy County. What I recall was that if they were going to build a production facility, that they would certainly be considering Hardy County because of our investment. But we were, basically investing into their research because of the longevity it would bring to phosphate mining and keep phosphate mining in Hardy County. If their research was successful, that it would provide an alternative to keep phosphate mining in Hardy County for a longer period of time. So I didn't think it was a guarantee. I would have to go back and review that meeting because that was probably 2 to 3 years ago, but I didn't think that there was a guarantee, but more of a consideration of bringing a plant to Hardy.
Well, why would we give somebody $200,000 in Polk County? $2,000 is our citizens' money and Hardy County citizens' money to somebody in Polk County if they're not going to reciprocate something to us.
Well, that's where the longevity of the jobs from phosphate mining would come into play in Hardy County. I mean, we were essentially helping to fund the research so that phosphate mining.
The stuff they're going to use is something that's basically thrown away by the mines. They can retake it and redo it, and get something different out of it. So I don't know where you're coming from, but I'd rather put this off for right now. That's just me.
Any other comments or suggestions from board members?
Why don't, go ahead, the other week, and
Can't hear you. John, dang, your microphone's not working or something.
it's on.
Chrissy, can you, that mic reach? If not, will you pass the handheld mic, please? I think that the handheld will be fine.
I went out there a couple weeks ago, Rick Knight and I went out and went with Tip through the plant. And besides the material that they weren't using, and what he mentioned, they would go deeper. Because it's not useful for phosphate below a certain depth. This way they can go deeper, so there'll be more product and the jobs will last longer. So that's basically what I heard from him. Or that. Is that what y'all have said?
Yeah, that's what I was trying to explain. You know, at this point, it's not feasible for them to do it because of what they would get, you know, their byproduct or what they would throw out would be useful to JDC, and that's why it would elongate phosphate mining in Hardy County.
But they will go deeper, not just what they throw out. They would enable them to go deeper.
I think it's a bad precedent to get into.
Why don't we go back and review what the presentation was last time and see what he said? And, I mean, I don't remember what he said.
Well, I don't, not exactly, but I thought he said he was gonna build a plant.
And
in
let's look
Hardy
and see
County.
what that is. I mean, the issue with going deeper and the longevity of the jobs makes sense, but, you know, I can understand where Donald's coming from on the $200,000. Why don't we look? Why don't we go back and look and see what that presentation was? We have the record.
Yeah, we can.
And let's see what it is and just bring this up next month. There's nothing pressing for us to do it right this minute, is there?
I don't think so. And Donald, did you ask him about that when he was here last month?
No, I didn't, because, we did not, it wasn't coming up for us to approve a grant. He was just here to get some information, so I didn't say anything.
So it's not that he said he wasn't, it's just we didn't.
No, he
have the
didn't say he
conversation.
wasn't. I just was wondering that Sarah or somebody had some information. Because I supported it last time. I mean, I made the motion to support it because of what my understanding of what he said. But I didn't hear that from him the other day.
And I don't disagree with Don on that. I'm almost certain he said something about building some type of plant on the first talk he gave us. I don't think he did yesterday. And that's something
why don't we do
question
this
we
then?
need to
Why don't-
ask him because, you know, we might want to give him more money.
I move that we table this today, and before we not put in the budget, let's go back and look at what was said last time, and in the interim, somebody talk with Tip and say, here's what you said last time, if in fact that's what it was, where are you now?
I agree.
And then we know where we are.
So we have a motion on the floor and a second by Lori, is that correct, Lori? I'm trying to stay up with you fellows over there. That we will table this and go back and review and see, what we had previously discussed on the grant award, and then also have some communication with him, bring it back to the next meeting. Any other, comments or discussion from board members? Any public comment? Mr. Kirkland, we'll come to you first. Switch it up a little bit.
Thank you. I would like to remind you guys of 189-403, where you have the definition of a dependent and independent subdivision. And one of the parts of the definition of dependent, which you are, declares that you operate within the boundaries of a single county or city, whatever you're subdivided from. So I think you're kind of going over the bounds when you move out of the county. So that's, I had copies of that. I left everything at home this morning, but it's 189-403, a very short statute. It defines the subdivisions, how they're created, and all that kind of stuff, who's on the board members, and your boundaries. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kirkland. Mr. Coleman?
You meant special district, independent special district. That's a good point. Spending money to Polk County. I was part of this. Well, first of all, tell me that this wasn't being slid by the board today in the form of a budget amendment. a $200,000 approval to give to JDC. My understanding of what was supposed to happen the last time that they awarded $200,000 is they were going to build a pilot plant in Polk, and then they were going to sell, give us $200,000 worth of some kind of a product that they were going to, aggregate they were going to make, put on the roads down here. That's what I heard. They didn't have any contract with Mosaic, CF, they had no supply of this rock. Now, the question I would have is, has any of that changed? Is a pilot, this is a couple of years ago, is a pilot plant up and running? Does it work? Is the technology there? Do they have a market? Do people want to buy the stuff? I mean, is it ready to go into full-scale production? Do they have contracts with suppliers? Does the money make sense to dig down to 100 feet instead of 60 or 70 feet? I mean, those are the questions. But what Don is saying, why would we front a couple of $100,000 to Polk County? Let Polk County give them a couple of $100,000 bucks. I mean, that's where the job's going to be. You're supposed to be a job creation board. Your job is to get jobs, create jobs. It's not to keep mining in Hardy County for another 150 years. So, I mean, that's on that part. Are you talking about only this amendment, not the whole budget thing, right, Chairman?
Correct.
Can you speak to that, Mr. O'Neill?
Is that complete your question?
That's what was said in the beginning was gonna happen. And since then, I've heard nothing.
All I can tell you is regarding that plant up there, it's a very small, teeny plant compared to what one would
It's a
be.
pilot.
And I'm,
Pilot plant.
okay.
It's a proof of concept.
Thank you. But anyway, the plant is down right now. Something to do with too much dust in the kiln, and they're working on solving that problem. So the plant there, I'm not sure the date, it might be April before it's back on board. So anyway, that's what I know. I just went up there, I went up there to look at the aggregate, that's what I did. And he was kind enough to take us to the plant and explained that plant is teeny, it looked huge to me, but it's very, very small.
It's a pilot. Thank you.
Any other public comment? If not, all those in favor of tabling this until the next meeting? Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Okay, now we will move into announcements, other business, public comment. Do we have any announcements or other business from any board members?
Yeah. I'd like to, maybe Bill's not here, so maybe Sarah can tell us on that USDA grant that we did not get. Okay, is the way grants work, or when you apply for grants, is that you apply for them, and if you don't get the grant, do they send you a letter telling you why you didn't get the grant?
I do not know anything about that particular grant and how it works.
Okay.
I would not be able to answer that question.
Okay, because I know there's a $25,000 to fill out the grant, and we didn't get the grant, but we can't find out why we didn't get the grant. I mean, there should be some procedure that we could, they sent somebody a letter, I'm assuming, that would tell us why we didn't get the grant.
I don't know. I mean, we can certainly check into that. I don't know how their grant process works.
Would Ms. Ken know?
I don't think you would probably.
You don't know why?
I don't.
Is that normal procedure? Is that if you don't get the grant, they send you a letter stating why you didn't get the grant? Is that normal with the county commissioners and?
Donald, I have no idea.
Okay. All right.
I'm not the point of contact. They wouldn't know me from Adam.
Right,
The
I understand that.
folks that were hired to do it are the point of contact, and if there was such a letter, I would assume they had.
You know, they haven't been back or anything. Have we paid them the $25,000?
I think
Well, we didn't stop paying them. We ought to.
No, I think we had to get through that first stage, which we did not.
Right.
So-
They wouldn't receive any funds unless we were actually awarded the grant and they went on to the second phase. So,
But, okay, so
Kind of.
we didn't get to the second phase.
right, you would formally pay.
Okay, well, that's good.
Yeah.
Okay. One more thing. Here a while back, we had something to do with the industrial development revenue bond financing guidelines and procedures. Is that just gone away?
Are you talking about when we approved those procedures at a prior?
Well, I don't think we approved them. I think we were just looking at like, Fort Myers and some other people's, we was gonna come up with some guidelines. It just disappeared.
Well, that was specific to the bionitrogen.
I was gonna take a stab at answering that. It's back burner, gone, just for lack of a better answer, because it was really being driven by bionitrogen, the need to develop the application and the rules for that, et cetera, and it has just been placed on the back burner.
Okay, I just was looking through some old material the other day and run into that and said, well, I think I'll just ask about where that thing stands. Okay, that's all.
Any other questions, comments, other business from board members?
Just a comment. One of the questions that have been raised by the public, I don't know if it's ever come formally to this board, I don't believe it has, but is the addition of nameplates for all the board members. So that the community, as they're coming in, they know who's speaking, they have an idea. I think that's a good idea, and I'd like to ask you to do that for the community. So it's relatively inexpensive, but we need a motion, whatever. It seems like a short, an inexpensive way to help the community know who they're listening to.
Thank you. I don't know why my microphone, all of a sudden I feel like Mariah Carey or something. I'm sure that's within the director's discretionary guidelines, so we will just ask the office to get those ordered. Thank you.
Second comment I'd like to make, I'd like to extend my appreciation to the staff for a lot of the questions that come up from the community as they're trying to understand what we do. And a lot of them don't have business acumen, nor do they have financial experience, so they don't understand the processes that we have to follow. And some of the questions that come up get very frustrating, I understand. But I'd like to just say thank you for the professional manner in which you guys, answer those questions. And it's a learning curve for all of us, but for people who aren't familiar with accounting practices or business, this can be a huge learning curve for them. And so when we have to step back and help them explain how we do a business, then I just appreciate it. Was that said?
Any other questions or comments from board members? If not, we will entertain public comment at this time. Mr. Coolman?
I want to go back and just explain, because this is a critical issue with this board. We're talking about when EDA grant, and let's just use the incubator accelerator as an example. Somebody comes along, let's say Ms. Blum, and she puts together an application that's using confidential, so Ms. Pelham puts the application together for $662,000, and then there's a couple of more applications put in for Cantu and the paddleboard. And if these applications were aggregate, and I understand the whole budgeting thing. You're going to put little boxes. It's going to be $80,000 for travel and $100,000 for trade shows. You're just putting all that in there, so you have these little boxes, these categories of expenses. And you give that to the EDA, they're looking at these big numbers, $1.5 million and stuff, and they didn't even get it until the Friday before the Tuesday, and they don't have, so they're doing just like you. They're a sunshine board. They meet once a month. They can't talk to each other. And they get this package, and then they're asked to hand out $5 million, and that's exactly what happens. And then after it's awarded, then Miss Blum is told, here's $662,000. Spend it any way you want. And as long as she submits those invoices that fit within these categories, so let's say that I did the same thing. And then I see a trade show that happens to be in Maui. And I decide I'm going to go over there. And I take my family with me. And I come back and I submit my invoices. Nobody's managing this stuff. It's exactly the same as happened with the Continuum Labs and LifeSync. No one is verifying, managing, there's no parent. So these expenses are just get turned in, and then in this case, they have to go through the clerk of the court. I know that Sandy Meeks, she's just making sure that you don't go over the travel budget. I understand this budget thing, but nobody is making sure that money went for the purposes. Nobody's managing this stuff. That whole incubator thing is a loose cannon over there. So they're just do whatever they want, and then they just throw the stuff in, and then you're trying to make it fit within the criteria to get through the clerk of the court. They cut the check. This whole thing was screwy. You're trying to pay people that don't have any money to start a business from scratch, and you're trying to run it through the EDA that assumes these people are capitalized. All of the stuff they did on LifeSync applies to all these people. They're not financially capable of doing any of this stuff. They don't have any capital. You said it.
Final comments, Mr. Coleman?
You said it, Ms. Mel. These receipts and stuff come into you. You don't know if that thing in Maui was a real thing or not. And you know how we can tell? Do you know how we can tell? On the back end. See, if there was a manager, there would be a back end to this stuff. There would be reports. I went to Maui, and here's what happened as a result of that. I did this. The same thing that happened with Mr. Bond.
Thank you, Mr.
Do you
Coleman.
get it? Do you get the gap there?
Thank you, Mr. Coleman. Mr. Coleman, I apologize. I thought we clarified this. You can go ahead and sit down. I'm just going to make some comments relative to your
I
statements.
know where the gap is. You're not going to fill it.
I'm just going to make some comments relative to your statements, and I apologize. I thought we clarified this earlier in the meeting today.
No,
We
you
do-
brushed it over.
I-
You're covering it up.
I am responding to your comments, and you were given the appropriate amount of time to speak. This is my opportunity to respond to your comments.
No.
As we explained earlier in the meeting, we do require backup to be presented. We require that their expenses or their requests line up with the budget that they presented to the EDA, that the EDA approves. We are not responsible for what the EDA approves in their meeting relative to these people having capital, not having capital. We are managing the grant for them. I completely understand and appreciate that you don't like the way that it's managed, but this is how we are managing the process.
It's not your fault.
Because it's not being managed to your standards or the way that you think it should be managed, does not mean that we are not requesting that documentation and receiving reports from those applicants. It is not, what you have presented is not the way these grants are being managed by the office. So,
Absolutely is.
thank you for your comments. They are, for the most part, untrue. Mr. Kirkland, did you have comments?
Yes, ma'am. But if somebody needs to be ahead of me, I don't want to be the...
I think you were next.
Well, on just what you said just now, the contracts is written to these projects clearly state that they have to produce documents to the ID when the ID asks for it. We have never, that I can remember, seen a single request from IDA for these people to come in and present papers, documents. They come in and do excuse my language if you can't handle it, snake oil, song and dance, and that is the end of the presentation. That doesn't prove nothing. So, I wanted to comment on a couple of things that was said during the meeting today. And Vanessa, if I get this wrong, explain to you where I'm wrong. I think I understood you to say that Continuum's creating jobs and all this kind of stuff. Or they understood you to say that. My question is, in all these jobs that's created, is a single one of them being paid from profits that Continuum makes off of selling a product?
I can't answer that.
You can't answer that?
No, I can't. I don't review their financials. I'm not their auditor. I can't answer your question. I did give you a report at the last meeting that they just raised almost $5 million in outside capital. So I can tell you they're not being paid off of Hardy County money anymore. That's your question.
Well, that would be part of the question.
There are other ways for businesses to have money than profits from the sale of their products.
That other ways is not sustainable. You're supposed to be looking for sustainable jobs. Jobs that can go on in the future, make it that derive their income from profits.
Are you familiar with Facebook, Snapchat?
Do what?
Are you familiar with companies called Facebook or Snapchat?
I'm not that familiar with that. I played with it a little bit.
Well, I understand that your perspective is that companies cannot be sustainable unless they have profits from sales, but that in fact is not true. There are a number of internet and tech companies that make significant amounts of income that continue to grow year after year without basing all of that on profits from the sale of the product. Certainly that is the goal, but there are numerous other ways for outside capital to come into companies.
You are very correct, but could it be that they're making the profits from selling advertisement on their sites?
I certainly hope so.
Okay. Is Continuum selling any advertising on their site? Do they make a profit from it?
I can't answer that, but I certainly hope that's part of their business plan.
Okay, well, all right. Now, I'll move to Sarah.
Your time is actually up, so I'm going to give you an opportunity to make some final comments.
I got to pick out this. Sarah, could you elaborate when you said you were in almost daily contact with LNG communications? Could you elaborate what these communications are about, that it goes on daily?
How you doing? Are you progressing?
I'm not here.
I mean, general conversation of, we had a good meeting today, just wanted to give you a heads up, just general conversation.
I mean, that could probably be a number of, is there something specific that you are asking about that maybe we could answer for you more specifically?
Basically, there seems to be, is this a personal thing between you and LNG people?
I think that that's an absolutely inappropriate comment. And at that point, we will end your comments. Thank you,
sweet.
and have a seat. Any other public comment? Mr. Chansey?
Again, Donald Chansey, 1224 Pine Drive. I guess since 2010, I've been bothered with seeing this spec building, whether it's in the paper or here or could you just take a minute and explain how y'all do this? Y'all fund it, and then you do what with it? Meaning you approve it as a board, whatever millions you do, then what do you do next?
I mean, is there a certain process that you're looking at, or are you questioning
I know how
the
it's done
fact?
in the real world, in my world.
Well, I guess I'm trying to figure out, are you concerned with the fact that we want to build spec buildings, or how the actual process is being managed?
You are acting as developers. In the private world, y'all would be a development company. Y'all have bought the land, you put the roads in. That's the definition in the private sector. But y'all are a dependent board. My question is, when you approve $1 million or $1.2 million, whatever, as a board, do y'all look at each individual invoice? Does Half Acre come in here and say, for the shell building that you approved, for a shell only, here's the invoices and this is what we pay?
So in your
Staff does.
Staff, not this board.
in your position with planning and zoning, is there, to your knowledge, has there been an issue with how we're managing that? Is there an issue with Half Acre, or is there an issue where we're not complying with the law in how we're managing it?
No, it has nothing to do with with planning, there's issues I have with planning and zoning, how things have been done, but that's a whole different ballgame. What I'm talking about is you award an amount for a spec building, let's say 20,000 square feet for $1 million or $1.2 million. As far as I know, there's no land involved in that deal. There's no interior walls, there's nothing. It's just a concrete slab, shell erected with grass and parking. That's $50, $60 a square foot for a shell. Now, y'all just said, and you even asked the attorney, oh, y'all are handling money, you need to be bondable. Do y'all feel comfortable approving a shell building that's probably double the price in the real world? If y'all are accountable, because it's been said that this board is the one that's accountable for handling the money. And nobody's asked for a half acre to come in here and do a breakdown. How do you know that XYZ concrete company is getting paid what competitive rates are? There's no accountability. Church boards do a better job than this.
I guess I'm not following you
Okay.
completely.
In the real world, a shell consists of a slab, a metal building, or a building with a roof.
I think that's where the confusion's coming in. We've never built just a shell.
Oh, yes, you have.
Oh, no, we haven't.
You have.
We have had a company in every building that we have built.
No, let's go back. PF Man started as a shell only. And I've got the
When it
paperwork
went to
to prove.
construction,
Oh, the original plans that were permitted were for a shell only.
and that came back before the board when a tenant was there, and the tenant
You had a change
approved,
order.
the board approved for that
Right.
tenant to
You
go
had an
in.
additional change order for how much?
But that's not what you were saying. You said that we paid double what the going price was for a shell building. That's not true.
If you take $1.2 million and you add a change order on top of it, how much is it?
How much was the change order?
From what I heard and saw, it was $300,000-$400,000.
Is that the improvements that they made to the building?
No.
So these were the change orders
Approved by this board
that we made specific to that building
for
for
that
the
tenant.
tenant.
Because when you started, it was a shell only.
Okay, but there's a
So,
tenant in
so
it.
then what was the price per square foot?
Go back to the original statement. When y'all approved a shell building, y'all been doing it since 2009-10, is this the process that y'all go through? Y'all just approve it, y'all let staff and construction manager handle it. If it is, it's the wrong way to do business.
Back to your original point though, the cost that you quoted was not a shell building.
Okay. The money that's just been approved for this other building that y'all haven't expended yet, it's went before the planning and zoning as a shell only. You do not have a tenant. We're just going to build the building and the shell. That's it. Now she's saying $1 million. Now, when you get a tenant, you're going to have to come back before this board and say, we now have a tenant. We're going to have to put offices, air conditioning, electrical, everything in it, because what y'all approved was a shell building only. So that change order is going to be added on top of that $1 million or $1.2 million. Now you've got $1.5 million, $1.6 million divided by 20,000 square feet. You're over $85 a square foot. And that's extremely high.
So the application that came to you for the shell building,
They couldn't even answer the question. She couldn't tell me at that meeting how much the valuation was. She had no memory of it. But here, it's $1 million.
well, we've been awarded $1 million for the purchase of for the construction of the spec building.
Right.
The application that came to you, did it have an amount on it?
No. I just asked the question because I had seen it in the paper. It was a floor cam building and a spec building. And if I remember correctly, the paper said $1.2 million for the spec building, and then the floor cam was higher than that. But my question is you as a board, how can you sit there and not ask for proof of how the money is being spent? Not depending on staff, because it's been said 2 or 3 times here, y'all are accountable for that money. Now, y'all have built projects, there's bankers here. Is $80 a square foot an okay price for a finished building?
Well, can you give me an example of a building that we've completed
Listen,
and
I will
what
do
the
this for
cost
free. I
for
will do
square
this for free. I have the
footage were?
buildings, I have the plans of the one you're proposing and the one that was built. I will get bids for the shell only. And I will bring it back to this board. I'll have 3 or 4 from the concrete company, 3 or 4 from the metal building company, and I'll put it before you.
And so how is that gonna, at the end of the day, be different than what we're doing with
Well, if
that?
I show that you could build that building for $400,000 or $500,000, and y'all are approving $1 million, where's the rest of the money going?
Well, I'm not saying that we've approved $1 million to spend, that's what we've been awarded the grant for.
There has been multiple buildings since 2010 that have been built under a spec building process,
So,
with change orders to come once there is a tenant.
but that's not what you're referring to at $85 a square foot.
It all works out to the same.
So you've done the math on the
Yes.
other buildings and we're at $85 a square foot.
You're between $80 and $85 on a finished product.
Okay, and have you incorporated in construction management cost?
That's 5%. Woo! That's a lot.
So,
That's a lot.
I don't know where the 5% is coming in, but,
Your construction manager with half-acre construction, he gets 5%. Of anything that's spent, he gets 5%. Do you know that?
yeah, we know
Okay,
what
well,
the
that's where the
contract
5%
is.
came from.
Half acre.
Right.
Even internet.
Take it at $1.5 million. You're nowhere justifying the cost at $80, $85 a square foot. No way, no how. And
I mean, without
all
seeing
I'm saying is,
the
y'all get
projects
more
that we've.
accountability. Okay, we're gonna approve X amount, but I want somebody to show me and prove. I mean, if they just bring one bid for the metal building.
I mean, half acre bids out every job that we
Half-acre has 4
submit to them.
construction and management companies under half-acre. Okay? Who's overseeing half-acre? Staff is. Not you. You're the board. I would have half-acre sitting right here explaining, because on a shelf, there's only 8 or 10 subs on a shelf, period. So when they write checks out, there's only 8 or 10 checks that are written. How hard is it to say invoice, 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 invoice? There you go. You can see it.
I tell you what, we will go back and ask Half Acre to provide us on the last 3 buildings what our cost was per square foot, so that we can have this conversation, because without having that in front of us, you know, I can't, you may very well have a good point, but without having that information, I mean, you're talking about a building that we haven't even.
But I would also like to see, because they should have it as construction managers, if they put it out to bid, there should be other bids in their file packet.
There is, every time we
No, what
discuss
I'm
that.
saying is you have awarded it to this, okay, there's the contract, but show us the other competitive bids.
All of that is in every file for every building we've ever built.
To insinuate it's not is ludicrous.
No.
There have been closeout reports that have been done before this board at the completion.
I'm
of
saying
that
in the
building.
real world, we don't spend that kind of money on buildings. I'm just telling you, there's no way in God's green earth we spend that kind of money.
Well, Don, one thing that I will agree with you wholeheartedly on is I wish that doing government business was as easy as doing business in the real world. It does not seem to be so.
It's actually the same, it's just y'all have more scrutiny. The private sector doesn't have to show their books, but I guarantee you this, it's their books and they're gonna watch every penny.
I don't agree that it's the same. We can't take a bid and go to a contractor and say, I got this bid from Gene Davis, what are you willing to do for me? We do not have the same ability to do competitive
That's exactly
negotiation.
right. And that's why most government bids are sealed bids. You're in a public room, you open the bids, there it is right
We
there.
do that process
We
for
do that
every bid opening.
process. So I think we got the gist though, and we will ask for that information.
If Half-Acre would come with all of his numbers and everything, I would be glad to look at it.
So you haven't looked at it? You're just making these allegations and you haven't actually looked at this?
I can't go to Half Acre and ask for it.
This is all public record. Everything that you've referred to is public record.
All right, so I can go to Half Acre and say,
You can go to the office where we have most of what you're referring to already.
all right, I'll start there.
I think that's a great idea.
Will do. And if I find anything, I can bring it back here, right?
I'd love for you to,
Very
actually,
good.
yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any further public comment? Seeing none, we will call this meeting adjourned and appreciate all of your time and patience.
I mean, look at it, it's like a sixth of the county. Look at that. I mean, you look at Hardin County, it's nothing but road, but you can't see it. Look at that. Well, take some perspective. The Lake just Lake Jackson and Cedar, Lake June. Look at
Well, we get to the point where it's dry, it's getting cold, maybe we can sell a lot of